and then we like stopped going.
Ajani Stella is a 15-year-old climate activist who has founded his own organization called Kids Fight Climate Change.
What do you want from me, people?
Yeah, it's
So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into climate advocacy, especially at a young age?
Yeah, so I started climate advocacy and climate activism when I was 10 in 5th grade. And that was through the work of my science teacher, STEM teacher, Vicky Sando. And Vicky, she was a great teacher. She talked to us about climate change, and we did hands-on environmental learning. We were lucky enough to have a green roof upstairs, so we got to experience nature, even in the downtown bricks of New York City. And so I really took an interest in climate change. I wanted to learn more. So we had one-on-one conversations. I learned about the greenhouse effect, about fossil fuels, about corporations causing climate change. And so she noticed that. So she had the opportunity to speak to the New York City Teachers Pension Fund or Teachers Retirement Fund Board of Directors, and instead she passed it on to me. So I went with a bunch of other teachers, and I was this 10-year-old who stood on a box at the front of the tall tower in the financial district with this stuffy board of directors. And I spoke to them just from my heart about how I appreciate nature, how I care about my planet, and how they hold our planet and my future, my ability to live a happy life in their hands. They have the power to create it and the power to destroy it. And that was the start of my work, and it snowballed from there.
Kids Fight Climate Change was officially accepted as a formal nonprofit as of last year and aims to educate the youth about the climate crisis. And a lot of studies say that younger generations are the most invested and passionate about climate change out of everybody. But at the same time, a lot of the adults are at places of power where they have the ability to make these changes. So when adults are the most maybe uneducated about this issue, but are incredibly important in determining our future, why do you think it's important to teach the youth?
Adults have a lot of resources available to them. And adults have subscriptions to the New York Times. They have access and funds to go read books, or more likely go read book summaries. And I think a lot of where our energy can be is just sending them there, because those resources exist. Why I'm focusing on youth education is because the resources don't exist for youth. 4th graders aren't going and reading New York Times articles. Even kids my age, we just don't have the time or the resources to be checking the news daily or reading magazines about climate change. So that's where we're putting our energy into creating the resources that need to be created versus versus the resources that are already available for adults.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the drive or enthusiasm between younger generations and older generations?
Young people are willing to stand up and scream at the top of our lungs at the people in power because they're not listening to us. I talk a lot about my work about marginalized or disenfranchised communities. But youth are also marginalized in our own way. We don't have a vote. All our decisions are made technically by our parents. We are confined in school, and no way am I advocating that we shouldn't have school. I love school, but we don't have the traditional say that older generations have. So we don't have the same reverence for the power structure. And so we're willing to do the actions that it takes to ensure that we have a system that works for us and that ensures our fundamental rights of the pursuit of happiness and a place to live.
The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change recently released its latest report. It details the looming threat of climate change on the human population and the rapidly closing window to address it. About the recent IPCC document, well, there was one that came out last August that was very intense and very raw for a lot of people to read, but the recent one maybe was arguably more intense or more like eye-awakening to people that don't know a lot about the subject. Like, what were your first impressions after reading it, or if you have?
Yeah. Well, my first impression was, well, duh. I mean, this is stuff that activists have been saying for years. And if you notice, one of the keynote statistics that is that this stuff from 2019 or from 2010 to 2020. So, I mean, it's really important that this information sparks national headlines. It sparks conversations in your home because it's timely. But I mean, we've been talking about this, just people haven't been listening.
Yeah. Is the world doomed?
No. If we do nothing, yeah, for sure. But I mean, philosophically, I think that we all have individual control over our actions. Do I think we're going to avoid all the effects of climate change? No, that's impossible. We're seeing them right now. It's happening today. But do I think we can stop before my house in downtown Manhattan goes underwater? Yeah, I think we can manage that, because the mark of a person, of an individual, is not how much we've failed in the past. It's how much we choose to make the right choices now. How much we change. How much we care. And I think we all have that power and have that ability. And I'm hopeful.